The mortgage crisis in America. Illinois now has the highest foreclosure rate in the nation. About 1 out of every 300 homes is in the foreclosure process. But on the national scale, there is a small glimmer of hope. The percentage of homeowners who are now underwater on their mortgage is declining. Will that trend continue? That and more coming up today on The Professors. Hello, I'm CM Winter-Palacio. The mortgage crisis has hit hard across America. More than 4 million homes have been lost to foreclosure over the past 5 years. Illinois now leads the nation in the number of foreclosures. So nationwide, more than 10 million homeowners are now underwater. Where and when will it end? And who's to blame? That's the focus on our discussion today on The Professors. And joining us today are Pamela Cannamore, a professor of communications at Kennedy King College; Nick Panomitros, an attorney, dentist, and professor at Kennedy King College; Duncan Sattler, a professor of economics at Wright College; and Carolyn Schoenberg, an attorney and professor at Harold Washington College. Welcome all. The foreclosure is affecting everyone, and I think for our conversation, I have to be really honest, and I have to say that I'm living through this now. So a lot of this conversation, it's going to be pretty transparent. But I think at the same time, I think it'll give us a way to actually inform a lot of people of what are some of the options and choices, because I just don't want to describe the water while drowning, right? Mm-hmm. So just yesterday, September 13th, right? Yes. Bernanke has announced that the feds are going to buy back Duncan, what was the number again?
Yeah, they're going to be injecting $40 billion a month into to buying up mortgage bonds in order to help us digest this process, so to speak.
And after they buy them, then what?
After they buy them, well, that money comes into the banks and it eases their stresses, gets those assets off of their books. So it frees them up to be able to supply more mortgages to people who are looking to buy homes.
Okay. Now,
is that going to really happen?
How does that help?
I mean,
how does that help the people that are in foreclosure?
Well, hopefully they would be able to get modifications, and there are programs now, and a lot of people have been helped. But the problem is that more people are underwater, and hopefully the action taken by the Federal Reserve will free up money and encourage the banks to start lending to people who need the assistance.
It's also meant to stimulate the demand side as well. I mean, we've got to get people back to work. We're still at over 8% on unemployment. Jobless numbers are not where we want them to be. So this is the Fed's intention to unstick the wheels of our economy, put people working again.
Will this help the people who have already went through foreclosure and left their home? Would they be able to come back to their home?
I think that would be very hard. I guess the one piece of advice that I would tell people is that if you are behind, there is help. Don't wait until you're in foreclosure, your house has been sold, you may even be out of the house. You need, and there is help, and I know we're going to give that information out. There is help to people even before they're served with summons. But don't ignore it or think it's going to go away.
But now, can we back up? Can we back up and to where this started, and with Illinois being the highest with the foreclosures, and what does that mean? How did that happen?
Because it sounds like Illinois wasn't paying attention. Did Illinois have the highest number of homeowners to begin with?
There are a couple things happened. How did it start? Well, I work for a nonprofit called the Chicago Legal Clinic, and I do immigration work, and started seeing people who really have very low incomes buying homes. And what they told me is that they were using their brother's income and that they were told that was okay. So a lot of people who would not be able to pay the mortgage, plus there were the balloon payments. But then it was discovered that a lot of the foreclosure cases filed, and Illinois is one of only 26 states that require foreclosures to go through court. So we don't know about accurate statistics in other states.
Carolyn, do you think that help me understand, why does Illinois have the highest number of foreclosures?
Well, I think there are many reasons. for one thing, we have a lot of people in the state, and part of the American dream is to own your own home.
Okay, that's one.
And another reason is that there were some defective filings of foreclosures, and while people were required to do it the correct way, some of the filings went down.
Are you talking about the robo-signing?
The robo-signing.
Okay.
And so now that they are allegedly doing it correctly, the lawyers, the
No, they're
people
not.
who are representing
Well, she said
the bank.
alleged.
Yeah.
She said allegedly
And then let me
doing
ask
it.
you this. Do you also think, sometimes when I sit around and have cocktail conversations and I heard that amount, I wonder about the role of Countrywide. And I think Countrywide has become the backdrop of this whole conversation because, so is it that for Illinois, for Countrywide Illinois was kind of like their anchor market?
I think Countrywide was part of the major lawsuit. The attorney generals in many different states, including Lisa Madigan in Illinois, actually started talking to some of the banks and mortgage brokers in Illinois, including Countrywide. And the end result was a huge settlement made available to the people of the different states.
But yeah, let's
Sam,
talk about that settlement.
Sam, we're looking at it on the tail end here. Where was the federal government? Where was government when these loans were getting sold to secondary markets? Fannie Mae, they weren't monitoring, and I think that the assumption that the prices of houses would keep on going up, and that you had this hard asset you could get was just not true. And so, where was government?
Was there no monitoring, do you think, because they were looking in the other direction, because everybody was getting paid?
I think everybody was getting paid. I had a student working at McDonald's and attending classes,
Right.
excited about being able to purchase a home. And I said,
Because
you
prices
work at
were-
McDonald's, how are you buying a
Okay,
house?
but
Prices were going up and
there's-
up and up.
This fits right into the discussion that started between Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, the role of government. To what degree should government step in and say we will not permit
But it was
this?
the government that was repackaging and reformulating. This is now the new American dream. You too can be
Have
a
a house.
homeowner.
Well, it is
You
part
too
of our
have a house.
heritage.
Right.
You
The
know,
American
houses
dream.
for everyone. It was kind of like they were giving out cocktails.
It's
So
really-
how can you not expect people to say, "Hey, I want to own a home too"? Duncan?
Well, I would say it's really hard for government to temper the enthusiasm of American business. And obviously they're elected officials. They don't want to put the brakes on the economy too fast. And they got caught up in it too, just like all of us did.
All right, so
Well,
everybody
houses were just, like I said earlier, the prices were just, skyrocketing. And like I said, you have a hard asset, but still, I think they had an obligation to
Absolutely.
monitor, with
all right.
secondary markets.
Well, let me tell you.
If someone
Selling
went to your
loans.
student and said, from the government, they got a call, they said, we've been looking this over, and we think this is a bad deal. You shouldn't do it. If any one of us got a phone call like that, would we welcome it?
But that's not what I'm
No,
saying.
good
I'm saying that you monitor it before you go into these banks and you see what they're writing before they sell these loans to
Okay, but
Fannie Mae
again,
or,
we're
or
both
secondary
lawyers.
markets. Okay.
To what degree can you just pop in and say, okay, show me your documents?
But
So-
They're doing it now, and they're doing it now to an
Right.
But
extreme
there
that
have
they're
been-
squeezing the market.
There have been laws, thank goodness, have been passed and regulations being written that will hopefully prevent this from happening again. And I say hopefully because I think
have to
it
get out of
will.
this first.
We have to get out of it, and I think it'll happen again in a different way because it always does.
The pendulum has swung to
Absolutely.
the other extreme. Before they were giving it away, they weren't monitoring, and now they are doing it to such an extreme that people are being squeezed.
All right, so what about the people that are not in the housing market? What about the people that are in foreclosure? What about the people that are going through this dreadful modification process, which is pure hell, by the way? What about those? What about those people?
Well, again, there is help, and I'm sure the whole experience is horrendous. But there is help. The chief judge of the Circuit Court of Cook County, Timothy Evans, put together a wonderful program for people who, before they're in foreclosure, they can go and ask for assistance. When they're in foreclosure, they can ask for assistance, modification, mediation. outside of Illinois, the state of Illinois has outside of Chicago, the state of Illinois has programs, and every state has programs. Again, are they going to work for everyone? Sadly, no.
Who does the program work for? Let's do a profile. Who does the program work for? And then now we're going to really have a good conversation. Typically, profile, who does the program work for?
Well, definitely someone who has not yet had their house sold.
All right, well, that's
I mean,
a
like
start.
a short sale or just any type of sold by the bank or?
I guess the best advice would be the moment you feel underwater, you get help. The further you are into...
If I'm drowning and you're telling me to get help, tell me where do I go?
Okay, well, first of all, I would call, if you're in Chicago, call a number for the Circuit Court of Cook County. I can give the number, 877-895-2444, 877-895-2444. And depending where you are in the process, you can get assistance with loan modification. If you have just been sued, maybe mediation would be a way to go. There is some assistance through the Chicago Volunteer Legal Services and the Legal Assistance Foundation for actual representation in court. And there are private attorneys who do specialize in this.
And what about those commercials that say, oh, file bankruptcy, and then that erases your debt?
I would urge you never to hire an attorney that you see in a television ad.
Well, there goes
That's my personal opinion. My personal opinion is that I would refrain from doing that.
But let me, okay. But I'm just still not satisfied in this conversation. I still feel like we're skirting around the issue. I live in a community, Auburn Gresham, that practically every other house is vacant. I live in a community where I can assure you, they say every 300 homes, every third home is in foreclosure. There are people who they're so far out in the water. Where do they get assistance? Because when we're saying that Illinois leads the nation in foreclosure, these are not people who are pre-foreclosed status. They are in foreclosure. So they have fallen back and they have not made payments. They have not reached out. Some of them have not gone to court, because that's a really rough thing to say if we're saying that Illinois leads the nation in foreclosures.
Sam, there's certain areas that are pockets, like the area you're talking about is certainly a pocket. A bank is less likely to work with you in an area where every third house is underwater. You know, there are areas, suburban areas or parts of Chicago where the market is not every third house, but a few here and there, and the bank realizes that they can recoup that asset at some point in the near future, and
but then how does that inspire someone to say, if you are in foreclosure, you call for help? Because you've immediately removed that element of hope. It's like, why even bother? I'll just sit here and I'll ride it out.
Wait.
You won't know unless you make the call. You need to make the call.
Sam, my point was that those areas, areas of issue, need to be specially addressed. And
Let's talk about that. What are some of the ways to specially address those issues? Pamela, what do you think?
Well, as far as, I was just thinking about your situation, because I'm in a new complex. They're doing regentrification in my community, and there's a empty unit. It was a husband and wife, and sadly, they got divorced. One spouse tried to stay, but they couldn't afford the home any longer, so they walked away. They walked away from home. So we have an empty unit on our block. And I'm just wondering, had they known, or had the wife in the home, has she known about this program that Carolyn is sharing, would she been able to stay in her home? But now we have this empty unit, and it's just disturbing, because it's sad, the plight, that the direction this is going. And I didn't realize that Illinois was the largest, and that is unfortunate. You made a remark earlier that why does it seem that Illinois is the best, or has the highest numbers in the worst thing?
Yeah, we're leading in all the worst ways.
Right, we're leading in the worst ways. And so I'm not sure. I think because we have an opportunity to talk to our students, because we do have older students that are homeowners, and we can make this information available to them before it gets to the point that they do lose their home.
The Chicago Legal Clinic has a small legal clinic at Harold Washington College, and I get a number of students coming in asking what assistance is available. And again, through the Circuit Court of Cook County, Chief Judge Evans, or outside of Chicago, the Attorney General's office has hotlines where you could call and give specific information and be directed into various programs.
That's a 411. That's a 411 for CCC. We get these emails, these mass blasts. That's a mass blast.
But hang on a
I love-
second.
and plus the Chicago Legal Clinic has walk-in in the Daily Center on 1303. Now you have to get there early.
Yeah.
But people can actually walk in without having an appointment. There's a hotline to call. The Legal Assistance Foundation has just received a lot of money through the settlement of the Attorney Generals. They gave out money within Illinois. The Legal Assistance Foundation got a lot of money to actually provide direct service to people in foreclosure who meet various
But also, I
guidelines.
wanted to add to that, in addition to those who are not in the Chicago area, I have also learned that a lot of the chapters of the NAACP and, what's the other one? I see the symbol, the equality sign.
The
Urban League. The Urban
Urban
League,
League.
they also have their outreach services. Now, I know we reached out to NAACP in the Far South Suburban Branch, which was very interesting. Sometimes I'll speak from the other end, from the experience. You call the number, you tell them where you're at in your status, and they start asking you to give us certain information, give us right to access your documents. When they scrubbed our documents, we find out that there's robo-signature. So what happens to the person that's involved in a robo-signature?
Well, again, that is critically important that you consult with an attorney, depending where you are in the
But
process.
not when I saw on TV.
Well, I
No,
wasn't so much focusing
Not
on
when
the
advertising on
attorney on
TV.
TV. I was mostly focusing on, they said that the answer is bankruptcy.
Well, I think that is an answer, but that may not be the answer for you.
The thing is
I
to know
guess-
your options.
Know
and
your
I-
options.
What
Why
choices you
isn't
have.
bankruptcy an answer? It seems to work for Donald Trump.
Well, that was in many ways a business bankruptcy. As an individual, bankruptcies stay with you for a long time.
Okay.
So you are going to have problems in the future, not only getting additional loans.
Well, they feel it's just 7 years. Oh, I can.
Right.
yeah,
Some
7
people
years.
saying, I don't mind being on a cash diet for 7 years. So
that
then
is
what?
an individual choice, but it also, some employers will not hire someone who've had a bankruptcy.
And it depends what kind of bankruptcy. Chapter 13, Chapter 7, which one's better for you?
Chapter 13 is when you were earning a wage, and basically you would set up a program for less than 100%, and you would have to pay the program
Payment plan.
a
Okay.
payment plan. But statistics show that a lot of people do not stay with the program and end up in Chapter 7. So again, I think the key is everyone has individual facts. It is important to contact someone, give the facts, and find out what are the various options for your individual case. There's no one size fits all.
Yeah, I would say that phone call is incredibly hard to make. It's got to be hard to walk into your office or hard to call somebody and ask for help. But I'm assuming there's no cost to that, right? Just to go talk
there
to
is no
somebody? I
cost.
mean, you
Well,
could get-
it depends. At the Chicago Legal Clinic, various programs are completely free.
Yeah.
So at the Harold Washington College, any student at Harold Washington College who comes in, it's absolutely free. We don't represent people, but advice and referrals, and we've had a lot of people come in
Sure.
for advice and referrals, and then there are the programs in the courts through the Circuit Court of Cook County
Nice.
where you can get help, but it is critically important, and you're so right.
Help
That
me. Help me.
first call is
Yeah.
the hardest.
Well, the call is the hardest to make, but then going to court is also hard. So explain to everyone, why is it important to go to court?
Because if you go to court, you have a chance to get out of the situation. There are, again, many programs in the Circuit Court of Cook County that possibly can help you mediate a resolution, represent you in front of the bankruptcy judge, in front of the judge in foreclosure. If you do not go to court, I try to educate my students that it's going to happen without you. Then you have no say, and this has an impact. Think of us as professors. When someone comes and saying, Professor, I'm having a problem with the homework, or I'm having a problem, personal problem, or whatever, we look at that person differently than someone who just blows off class, doesn't do the assignments,
Touche.
etc.
True.
But going to court, guys, I mean, you know, you're talking about the student that works at McDonald's. You got to take off from work. You have to go multiple times. It's not a stress-free situation
That's
without
true, and some
without
people-
ramifications.
and some
Try to
people
work at
feel more
McDonald's and
bothered.
ask for you know,
day off.
day off or 3 times a month days off, and you're going to find that it's not going to happen. So a lot of people just don't want to deal with it, and they're put through more hardship by going through the process.
I don't know as if I agree they're put through more hardship.
Because there's no guarantee.
There
You're
are
just saying there's a guarantee.
never guarantees except if you
It is
don't
an
go.
emotional roller coaster, people. Trust me. It is an emotional roller coaster because you go through these several layers of judging yourself, judging what did I go wrong? Did I allow myself to be bamboozled? Am I being judged? Am I now seen as this degenerate? You know, so you do go through these several, it's an emotional roller coaster. So that's why I keep telling people, it's not just black and white or do you have the money to put on the table. There's some counseling that goes involved. One of the best conversations I heard was just like, you know, when people really console you and say, look, it's okay. We're not here to judge you. We know that it's a messed up situation and we're going to try to see our way out. I think that's a good approach, but you're right. There are some people who do not work in an organized labor environment, and to say I need to take off is almost as if signing your resignation.
Absolutely.
But it is worse if you don't go, because then you may
this is
have
true.
some control, and there may be a solution for you. There may not be, but you have more of a chance of finding one if you're involved than if you just blow it off.
You know, CM said something earlier about us working on the back end, and Nick made reference to that too. And I'm just thinking, do students or homeowners, future homeowners, really know what goes into purchasing a home? Right. I've heard the term house poor. And I said, well, what is house poor? And I found out that house poor is you have just enough money to get the down payment together and you get in the house, but you have no furniture, no food, you can barely make the utilities, but you're in the house.
Well, the value of your home too is below your
Way
mortgage.
below.
So that's house poor, being underwater. You owe more than the house is worth.
Let me ask you this. Let's talk real quick about the underwater issue. All right, so all of us, we sit around, we have our cocktail conversations, and we know how we can cure the world, right? So here's my fancy idea. Why can't they just simply say, dear bank, you will strike a deal, and you will modify based on the current market value? Why won't that happen?
That's a good question.
Why can't they just modify based on the current market value? The banks already got, help simple CM understand.
think it goes-
The banks already got bailed out. You already got
Right, and they
chipped
don't-
off for what you say you were going to lose because you saw the demise coming. So why can't you just say, hey, you know what, Pamela, this is what I'm going to do. Right across the board, everyone, whatever your current market value is, that's what we're going to modify the loan on based on this particular
Because
interest rate, and whatever you owe in the
Sounds good.
background, it's forgiven. Why can't you just pick the needle up off the LP and reset?
CM, it's contract law. You signed a document. I'm not saying I'm advocating that. You signed a document, and that document gets sold to somebody else, is backed up by FDIC, and American law, Anglo-American law, is still what. It's going to stay what it's
But
been.
you can't
You
have
sign
it. You
something,
can't
you
have
got to
it both
stick with it.
ways.
You got to
You mean
stick
the
with
now
it.
robo-sign?
It would
Even
set
the
a bad
robo-sign.
precedent, I think. is
What
the
bad
reason
precedent is that to help
that
people?
I'm not disagreeing you shouldn't help people, but at the same time, you can't set a new precedent
Well-
saying, well, you could sign stuff and later on it doesn't mean anything.
Nah, I disagree. I disagree.
I think-
Everybody.
The
what
entire-
about the bailout? That seemed to happen pretty miraculously.
The entire business world would fall apart if we did not honor
Why
contract.
not? We're
But
falling apart.
I agree with you that more can be done.
More aggressive things.
How
can be
about
done.
sending someone to jail? Who has gone to
But
jail
sending
on this?
someone,
No.
using Duncan as an example, sending Duncan to jail is still
I
not
don't
going
want
to
to see
help
Duncan
my
go to
neighborhood.
jail.
Yeah, it would. I think it would.
Having some very visible, when you had the Enron scandal, the big accounting scandal, very visible people went to jail.
Yeah,
And
that
that-
didn't do nothing for me.
Well, maybe it doesn't do it for
few
you, but
million
hopefully it would do
for 5
something
years.
for the person who would be thinking about committing fraud, that there may be
But
What
a
about
repercussion.
she's absolutely right. And what about those legal loan sharks? Remember, you could go and get a a loan, what is it, a payday loan? And
Right.
they
Oh, they're
shut
still
that
out there.
down.
No.
Oh, I thought they shut
Oh,
those
no, they're
down.
still
No, they are still out there,
right.
and
Because
I'm
they were
wondering,
operating-
and they're lobbyists.
Okay.
Sam,
But
what they
that's a
need,
whole nother talk show.
what needs
We
to be-
got 2 minutes left.
what needs to be done is you need to go at the policy level higher up and make it an incentive for these banks to really work with these
But
people.
I thought the bailout was the incentive.
I don't
Help
think
me
it's enough.
understand.
Not enough.
Perhaps the terms of the bailout agreements were not specific enough in setting guidelines and requiring banks to do more. So maybe that was an error that was made in the past and hopefully would not be made in the future. But I'd like to see some very visible people go to jail.
That's a good way to end up. Duncan, what would you like to see?
Well, I would like to see, one of the big issues right now with banks is that Fannie and Freddie are putting back these toxic mortgages to the bank. They're making them repurchase a lot of these mortgages. And until that's worked through, we're still going to have, kind of a sluggish financial industry. So I'd like to see some resolution between the banks and Fannie and Freddie and getting that stuff worked out as quickly as possible.
Got about a minute left. Real quick, Nick, real quick.
I'd like to see you go to jail. I sort of just said it already that I think that at the policy at a level higher up, there's got to be incentive. I don't think we should dismantle the system. I mentioned the contract law
Yeah.
is important to honor, keep precedent, but I think there needs to be made some incentive for these banks. And you said before it hasn't been done, but there's got to be mechanisms, systems they could put in place to really make it an incentive for the banks to help these people that are underwater.
Pamela.
And I think even before we get to that point, that the person or the family be aware of what it entails to be a homeowner so that it doesn't happen into foreclosure.
Well, this is what I like to see. I like to see, I won't say that. What I like to see is I like to see policy driven by people who truly love the people that they serve, and the end goal is to keep everyone in their homes first. That's our show for today. Thanks for watching, and join us for another edition of The Professors next week.